You on the table. I wonder if you'd mind taking a brief survey.
Severance is definitely the next big thing when it comes to TV shows, as it's managed to keep audiences engaged even after the gap that it had between the first and second seasons. The second season only excels on the bits that the first season left for us, and it's amazing to see how far Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson are ready to take us in their journey to give us one of the finest shows in history. But with a good series, there are always fan theories, and with each episode, these theories seem to change and adapt into new forms. Let's take a look at 10 theories that try to demystify Lumon's objectives in Severance. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The working clones. Well, the very first theory we'll subject ourselves to comes from one of the latest episodes from the second season of Severance. Remember during the Ortbo experience, we witnessed some rather creepy looking clones showing their way to the MDR group? It was themed after the very fact that Kier Egan himself had a twin named Dieter, with whom he had a rather creepy experience early in his life that made him come in contact with one of his tempers. Whoa. But talking about the clones, it's not surprising that Lumon decided to make the entire experience creepy by using them to get the MDR group a better understanding of Kier's relationship with his twin. Lumon has always been creepy with their methods, ranging from the awkward gift they gave Seth Milchick to the Irving-shaped fruit head provided during the funeral they had for him. Now, one thing we can understand from looking at the clones is that they do look lifeless somehow, as if they have the complete looks of the MDR people, but are completely soulless. Particularly in that scene around the waterfall where they could be seen creepily standing together and looking at the MDR group with smiles on their faces. It doesn't make sense that someone would make clones just to use them to make a point and not for a larger purpose associated with the larger company group involved in something Lumon seems to be involved in. Even though Adam Scott has rejected this theory, which states that Lumon is working on creating perfect clones of all the individuals from MDR, there's still a chance it might be true. According to Adam Scott, that's just something a super boring version of Severance will have Lumon be doing. But if you hold the thought for a second, consider the idea that Miss Casey is a perfect clone of Gemma, and Cold Harbor is a project associated with making a perfect clone of Gemma, which only Mark S. can perfect. There seems like a chance that we might be getting somewhere with this theory. Maybe all these clones are generated using AI, and then the second part of the process is to work on how to perfect these clones by working on their other aspects to perfect the AI creations. Once these clones are perfected, Lumon will have something that they can call the perfect employee, and a group that can continuously work for Lumon and be their creation. It all comes from a tiny point, a wild fact that one of the anagrams for Dieter Egan is AI generated. So there is a chance that all this time Lumon was trying to perfect their clone creations and thus make the ideal employees for themselves, giving them subtle human aspects, something that Gemma might be the very first candidate for. Yeah, we surely did take one of the most popular and rejected theories as our first one, but hold on to your horses, there's more where that came from. Artificial intelligence. Over the years, the idea of perfecting artificial intelligence has grown to the point that it's impossible to identify whether the output generated is AI-based. The uncanny valley persists, and we can still feel when a particular response we're striving for lacks something truly human. So we'll stick to the theory initiated with the idea that Dieter Egan is a perfect anagram for AI generated. Leaping from that point, maybe there's a plan to perfect artificial intelligence using tempers to humanize it. There's an interesting parallel to the Matrix in Severance, wherein we could see an illuminated fish tank with an interesting design at Mark's place. The fish tank is divided by a wall in the middle, and it contains red and blue beta fish, an interesting parallel to the blue and red pills from the Matrix. Even though it's not a clear response to the ideas behind Lumon and what's real and what isn't, it just puts into deeper thought what made Mark think of such a particular fish tank design to keep his fish away from each other. Anyways, getting back to the theory at hand, the MDR people's work is associated with their feelings and reactions to the numbers that pop up on their computer screens, thus making the human stimuli an important part of the work. If you think about it, it does seem very similar to the idea behind those CAPTCHA tests that browsers make us do to prove that we're not robots. However, the data set that the MDR people are working on is much deeper in the sense that they're actually trying to gather data about the human stimuli to create a certain data set that could be used to train AI. So the refiners might just be processing consciousness-related data and helping Lumon create a far more advanced version of the AI that would be capable of housing human minds. minds. It isn't surprising because many modern authoritarian states face the problem of a demand for highly skilled labor or a workforce that doesn't feel limited by the idea of autonomy. In fact, the entire secondary personality of these individuals could be a version of the AI itself, something that Lumon has put through various controls using the microchips they've put in their brains. So, when these individuals rebel against management, it might be a failure. However, their work is still high priority because they merely bring the next level of workers for a corporation like Lumon. A dystopian society of severed people. Remember that video that Helly R was made to watch when her Audi Helena talked about how Severance could be seen as the future of humanity? And since Helena turned out to be an Egan herself, it could be a reference to how Lumon sees Severance as more than just a business model. Helen describes how the procedure feels like an evolution in society and a transformation she supports entirely, which is quite shocking for Helly, her innie. Now, imagine a situation where Severance is no longer a choice a particular corporation provides to get employees, it's a choice given to them. But imagine it being enforced by the government as a practice that could ensure that there's no more free will and personal autonomy, resulting in a much easier workforce to control and manipulate. The workings of Lumon itself indicate how much it thrives upon the idea of the success of Severance and looks at it as the foundation for a new social order. We might have considered it a workplace innovation only. Still, the Egan family and the others dedicated to working at Lumon consider everything Kier said and did religiously important and prophetic. Returning to the perpetuity wing again, Kier is held like a mythical prophet, with all his ideas and thoughts taken as important steps towards shaping human thought and behavior. Projects like the Cold Harbor hold much at stake for Lumon, so much so that even the board is seen more actively in the second season when Mark is working on this particular file. Maybe the success of Cold Harbor will be a significant achievement that will allow larger clients to gain some interest in the Severance project. By larger clients, or other people interested in the project, we mean people from the socio-political spaces who might support Lumon's plans. We witnessed one such individual, Senator Angelo Arteta, who became a major political supporter of the Severance procedure. So Lumon is already playing its cards right in its political space, and it won't be long before they gain a majority and manage to implement the Severance procedure on a larger scale. Even though the full extent of Lumon's plan remains unknown, it's clear that their project is a prototype for a totalitarian system that could redefine human existence. The world's a simulation and Lumon's in control. One of the most eerie things about Kier's outside world is that it's filled with a variety of things that make it feel like a simulation. The cars people drive aren't very varied, and most of them look the same. The places where people live are too symmetrical. Even buildings and other structures feel like they could be places for NPCs from a video game to hang out. It does make sense, considering that sometimes we could see Lumon working alongside the Innies' rebellion and not stopping it, as if it were all a programmed effort and not really out of their control. Maybe Lumon is really trying to experiment with the individuals at MDR to see how far they'll go before they realize that their reality is artificial. The conspiracy theory. Remember the reference that the Ortbo episode made to the Montauk Project, which shook us to our core because that would mark the first time the series referenced a real-world theory? Yeah, there's a chance that Lumon is just another one of those organizations working on something like biological experimentation and genetic engineering on a scale larger than what the outside world might be thinking of. Now, to get into this theory, we have to understand that Irving is someone who also believes in this theory and is in fact someone who might have started working for Lumon just to get more hints to support his claims regarding this theory. The very first hint we had about biological experimentation was when we witnessed the baby goats Mark and Helly accidentally encountered while going through the severed floor. Later, when they returned to this place, they found that this division was called the mammalians nurturable. How this particular interaction went might suggest a larger conspiracy theory. Some fans believe that this might have something to do with Dolly, the first ever successfully cloned animal in scientific history. Maybe the goats were the first to undergo the experiment of being severed and having multiple personalities. Only later, humans were chosen as the subjects for this procedure. Using neural manipulation, Lumon might be working towards clones that can be controlled and advanced using certain features that are found to be beneficial for greater purposes. The Truman Show theory. This theory arises from the very contrast that we see in the worlds of some of the MDR people when they transition from their outie life to their inner life. Mark's life outside of Lumon is weirdly repetitive and even isolating, including his social circle, including his sister Rickenna and her husband Devin. Even Devin feels out of character and out of place during his interactions with Mark, considering he has some really colorful moments that don't fit the norm with the rest of the people. In fact, Devin feels like the most lively person in the whole of Kier, and thus I fear he might just be a spy working for Lumon looking into Mark's life. But getting back to the theory, Mark's life is pretty dull outside of Lumon, and the only time we see him enjoying the peak is inside Lumon, when he's trying to get his colleagues back, or when he's trying to solve a particular mystery with them, or even, who can forget, dancing with them. Even in our other video that supported this theory of the outside world already being in control, we saw many places named after Egan and his family. There's clearly something bigger at play, which brings us back to the fish tank in Mark's apartment, which had the blue and red fish. We don't really know whether the outie Mark is the severed individual or the innie Mark. Maybe Lumon's real objective was to create a perfect set of people who could break through the control of Lumon and actually become individuals who had real emotion. All these moments where they sang and danced filled them with a bit more color, thus they could provide much more effective results when they worked on their tempers. The ideal employee. Sticking to the previous theory to a certain degree, if we look at the idea of how Mark becomes a significant employee for Lumon in the second season, it's interesting to see how it's related to the presence of Gemma or Miss Casey. Maybe the true objective of Lumon was always to find the ideal employee and put them through various scenarios, including one where they introduced someone the employee had a relationship with in the outie world and made them go through that relationship again. We saw how even Irving went through something similar and interacted with Bert, only for Bert to be let go when things started getting very serious. It doesn't really stand for much as a theory, but there's a chance that Lumon will use Gemma to derive a particular result that Lumon needs. Maybe a meeting between Bert and Irving's outies will give us the answers we need before Mark completes Cold Harbor and Lumon's true objective is fulfilled. Kier Egan, the resurrection. While corporate control might be one of Lumon's major tools, how Kier Egan is depicted inside Lumon's premises suggests something sinister. Ever since the first season, it's quite clear that the employees at Lumon are supposed to treat Egan as a godlike figure, with his teachings and life experiences being brought in through scriptures, and even his ideology is deeply ingrained in the workings of the corporation. Employees are often seen reciting his quotes and not forgetting to reference him every chance they get to make a point. The Perpetuity Wing has a shrine that feels like a museum of Kier's house, and even has an eerie-looking wax figure of Kier that's also life-size. Now, Kier died a long time before Mark and his colleagues started working at Lumon, but that doesn't mean that his thoughts and other factors are dead. It has been indicated multiple times that Lumon's work has a very core touch with Kier's life and how he would have responded to a particular circumstance. Apart from that, there's the board, a voice that doesn't make an appearance, but whenever a situation calls for the board, they make an appearance through the creepy asking for help smiles of Natalie or the announcement speakers. They are ever present, and their behavior, though strict, seems to be way behind its time, with moves that feel awkward and gestures that feel like they are better avoided. Yes, we're specifically talking about the gift given to Seth Milchick, which makes it feel like the board isn't current with modern day scenarios. So what are we indicating? Maybe the core idea and the workings of Lumon, particularly the MDR division, are associated with resurrecting Kier. The prime example of this could be seen in the way that Ms. Casey could be a resurrected version of Gemma, Mark's wife, whom he himself saw die in a car accident. Maybe they managed to preserve her and reconstruct her consciousness. Now they're trying to perfect her for a successful test scenario to resurrect Kier and bring him back to his prime condition. Another theory uses a similar approach. Maybe not bringing him back, but keeping his brain alive and executing his plans. Often, the brains of geniuses are saved so they can be worked upon and studied in the future. Maybe Lumon isn't working towards resurrecting Kier, but instead trying to work on keeping his thoughts alive by putting his brain into application and continuing with his plans, which would benefit the Egan legacy. It sounds far-fetched, but a version of this is already at play, with each individual at MDR working on different aspects of the tempers that allow them to understand Kier's brain. They're surely oblivious to this, but soon they'll have a similar thought pattern, turning them into the perfect host for someone with a brain capacity like Kier. There are several moments in the series where the severed individuals are treated as non-living beings, as if they're just temporary means to carry out the tasks at hand. Once they fulfill the task, they'll be thrown out, but that just means that if these beings were given complete access to the workings of Kier's mindset while they were fully conscious, like their outie personality, then it might lead to some bizarre consequences that might be completely out of control for Lumon to handle. But the idea that the innies can be controlled and their memories can be erased, rewritten, or implanted is something that indicates they can be the perfect place to construct a perfect replica of Kier's mind. This means that Lumon is trying to ensure the perpetuation of its founder, Kier, as a permanent, undying presence. So, Kier will never truly die, but continue to exist in a dystopian version of the resurrection, where each and every employee of Lumon will be carrying the ideals of Kier as a vessel, and the true goals of Kier could be achieved more easily. It sounds like a sinister plan, and the way the series progresses, they're halfway to succeeding. Post-quantum era encryptions, a cryptographer's tale. Now, this is a theory that I enjoyed, considering it took an interesting bite into the entire lore and brought in a whole new perspective towards the workings at Lumon. One of the first things that we witnessed in the workings of the individuals at MDR was associated with sorting numbers that appear in groups and evoke a certain emotional response. Now, each of these numbers, or these groups, is assigned a particular emotional state that ranges from woe, dread, and malice to frolic. So it becomes clear that humans play an important role in this work because the categories are classified based on human emotions. But the question remains, why would a corporation like Lumon need human emotion to play an important role in data processing? The answer to that lies in the idea of encryption. Yes, cryptography in modern times depends on mathematical theories that seem extremely complicated and nearly impossible to solve if you don't have strong computational power, and yet still there's a way around them. However, in the post-quantum world, these encryptions are further threatened by the idea that quantum computers can process the solutions simultaneously. So yeah, there's always a way around. However, human emotion is one factor that machines, all quantum methods, or even AI can't work around effectively. So there's a chance that Lumon is trying to introduce a whole new level of encryption technology based around these tempers, something that will prove to be further difficult to work around, however advanced the technology working around it seems to be. Now, look at the hints and references indicating that Lumon might be working towards these goals. The first thing we observe is that Lumon's work is very secretive. It's so secretive that the employees working at the MDR division are all separated, so they can't take their work or even comprehend it in the real world and bring it up in those interactions. Each of the other divisions we've witnessed in the series is also associated with these workings because they support this theory of refining the encryption breaking technology. Take the art department. Their work is also associated with tempers. Here, the employees could be working on observing how the different art generates a particular human emotion and thus form an interesting database from these human emotions. Even the music and dance break could be a means for the corporation to affect the emotions of the MDR people by putting them through a different emotional journey and thus changing the particular route they've been taking in their work. Once Lumon perfects the idea of creating this methodology of a human emotion-based encryption-breaking network, they can access almost any type of information in the world. This would allow them to create a massive decentralized system and thus form one of the most powerful entities on the entire planet. This theory might sound far-fetched compared to the other theories mentioned here. Still, it does feel like a major possibility for an organization like Lumon to work under the guise of a true corporate-looking workplace environment. So yeah, another theory that proves that Mark, Helly, Dylan, and even Irving are cogs in a machine that will eventually control humanity. Marvelous verdict! We here at Marvelous Videos support bits and pieces of all these theories, and we even think that more theories could be developed based on every detail the series has revealed about Lumon so far. Let's hope this season provides some clarity by the end, and that we can actually theorize something that supports all the individual elements we can all support together. That's all we got for you this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.